four was never kind of always in our plans.
It was in your plans.
Okay.
In a time and a season when it feels like everything is limited. I feel like there's already not enough time. There's maybe even not enough resources. Like, why are we having another one?
Most of our obstacles to starting families is I count the cost and I'm not sure I can pay the price.
Yeah.
And I want to acknowledge the reality of what it means to have kids. It's a
Yes.
huge decision, it's a huge investment. It's the people of faith, I think, who really need to lead the way.
Yeah,
One,
correct.
in having families, but also in setting a culture and restoring the value of what it means to have children and to build a family. I think if we can see that decision as a step of faith that reflects our values, I think that changes the decision about starting a family. It is a step of faith.
Yeah.
And I think that was really important for me to see, because the reality about choosing to have a child is that there are many costs involved with it. The Bible says that children are like arrows in your quiver.
Yeah.
So that they're not like stones that you have to carry in your bag, like a weight that you have to carry. They're like arrows in your quiver that you get to, fire.
Hey, welcome to the Live Full podcast, where we talk about all things faith, family, and living fully the life God wants for you. On today's episode, I'm joined by my husband once again, Chris, and we're going to be talking about something pretty close to our hearts. We're back. I think it's been a while since we had an episode.
It has been a while. I don't know. It's been a month.
No,
Like
3 weeks maybe.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So long.
you've been a little bit off the grid. Maybe you want to tell everyone what's been going on in our lives.
Well, so many things have been going on. Thankfully, I am alive and well. Still having the baby. Yeah, he is still not out yet. It's a boy. I think we had a bunch of stuff that were happening along the way. I actually contracted shingles about 2 months ago. That was a huge blow, because I think it's one thing to have shingles, and then it's another thing to also be pregnant and have shingles. So that was quite the pain. If anyone wants me to relive this story, I'll be happy to share it with you one-on-one.
Well, just don't relive the experience.
Not the experience.
Yeah.
No, thank you. It was very painful. And then we traveled for a week, actually, about 1 week ago. We just
Yep.
came back to see some of our leaders that were in Japan, in Tokyo. So that was really fun too. We got a bit of time together. And yeah, just life happened. But we're back.
We are back, and we are, what are we, like, we're in season 4?
5?
Oh, season 5?
Yes.
It's season 5, you see. I've even lost track. We're in season 5 now. And so actually today is kind of interesting. We were talking about what we wanted to talk about on today's episode.
Yeah.
And something quite rare happened. I told you, look, there's something that I actually want to bring up.
I know.
I actually want to talk about. Usually you're the one who's like, hey, I think, we should talk about whatever the topic is. But this
Yes.
time around, I felt just over the last few weeks, a few things have been going on. And I just felt in my heart that I wanted to talk this through with you. And, this might help some people who are listening to this episode. And here's
If your husband says he wants to talk about something, we talk about it.
yeah, it's rare that I'm like, hey, let's talk, and like, let's talk about this thing, So, and when I said it, you're like, all right, this doesn't happen often, so
Yes.
so let's do it. And it has to do with kids and having kids, and maybe it's because we are having our 4th one very soon. You're 34 weeks pregnant now, so
Yeah.
anytime in the
34
next
and a half,
month,
maybe. Yeah.
month or two, this kid is coming.
Yes.
But it's interesting because, as we've gone round and, people see, oh, you're pregnant, and they ask, like, oh, you're having kids. They would say, oh, is it your first one? And I would say, no, actually, it's our 4th. And the funny thing is, most of them would say, oh, Singapore thanks you,
Yeah.
right? Or the government thanks you.
Like
And
it's some form of national duty.
yeah, like
that we
I
fulfilled.
did it for our country or something, which I didn't. I mean,
Of course.
it's great.
We love our country.
We love our country, but I'm not having kids for the country. But it's, I think it speaks to a prevailing culture and something that's very real in our society and in our times. I think not just in Singapore, but really all around the world, where, birth rates are coming down.
Yeah.
And the value of having children is on the decline,
Yes.
I think. And so if you live in Singapore and you're here, it's big news, right? It's like an existential issue for Singapore. It's like, man, in a generation, like we're not sure if there will still be Singapore,
Yeah.
because there just like aren't enough of us to reproduce ourselves. And I thought about it not just as a public policy thing, but as a heart thing, and something that's pretty central to to our faith
Yeah.
as believers, but also is a pretty big kind of issue, I think, in our society
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah, well, Chris was a public servant before. And so, yes, public policy is a huge part of his heart.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think this really, reflects a bit of a different part of, what he's passionate about too. I think something about values
Yeah,
and even just upholding some of these things in our faith,
yeah,
right? Even we talk about how people react to it. Some people do react to it like, oh, Singapore government thanks you, right? Actually, for others, maybe I felt like sometimes, I wouldn't say negative responses, but it's almost like oh, good for you, but not for me.
yeah,
I think I've gotten a sense of that too. It's like good for you that you want so many kids, but I don't think that's for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
And four is never kind of always in our plans.
It was in your plans.
Okay, I mean, when we first got married, I was like, let's have 4 kids, but I meant it half jokingly.
Yeah.
But I guess the joke has become reality right now. But yeah, I mean, what I was feeling, I think, the last few weeks was just, man, it's you know, people aren't wanting to have kids, and it's all personal decisions. So this is like by no means saying, hey, why aren't you having kids? Everyone has their own journey to follow, and all that's fine. But it's a funny story that happened maybe just in the last week. I had an older relative who came to me and he said, man, my kids came, and the kids just got married, and they don't want to have kids, but they
Yeah.
love their dogs, right? They love pets. And so they got a new puppy, like a female puppy, and brought this puppy to my relative's home and said, oh, daddy, I want you to meet your new granddaughter.
Yeah.
And he was just like, I can't believe this,
Yeah.
like this is not, I mean, we love your pets and all that, but like, like have kids,
Yeah.
And this is not a rare example. I think it happens like pretty often. And I want to acknowledge the reality of what it means to have kids. It's a
Yes.
huge decision, it's a huge investment of time, of energy, and it's a pretty major life choice, I think, for couples. But my heart is this, hey, especially if you're a believer, if you're a person of faith, I think that's something that we should all step into.
Yeah.
I had a chance to speak with our member of parliament, in the West, in the area where we pastored recently, and he's a Malay MP, Muslim man, and so I'm not sure if we already had the kid, but he's got 4 kids too, and we were talking about this, and he said, he's not a Christian, but he said, it's the people of faith, I think, who really need to lead the way,
Yeah.
one
Right.
in having families, but also in setting a culture, and restoring the value of what it means to have children and to build a family.
Yeah.
And that really struck me, and it's something that I feel quite passionate about. But I recognize that there are challenges, and sometimes there are obstacles in our way as we try and make that decision about having kids. And we counsel couples, and some readily want to start a family and have children. Some are like, I kind of want to, but like I'm not sure because of the cost involved. And I wanted to talk about a few things that I hope will be helpful to people who are at that point of decision.
Yeah.
Maybe you are thinking about having kids, but you're like, man, I'm not sure. It's expensive. It's going to take so much of my own effort and energy. I don't have the help that I need at home. And I was just hoping to talk about a few things that maybe might be helpful for someone in that situation.
Yeah, I think families are really important, right? If you learn in sociology, actually, families form kind of the bedrock of society.
Yeah.
In fact, in churches too, actually, a big part of healthy churches is us seeing families come through, building their lives, wanting to raise their families actually in church too. And so we see the value in that. A lot of us come from families, right? Some healthy,
No, we
some
all
not.
come from families by
We
definition.
all
Yeah.
come from families. And that's how, like, things are built and societies are built. And so it is a valuable thing, I think, to think about, and it is worrying to see the trend a
Mm.
certain way too.
Yep.
And so I think we're just sharing our hearts,
Yep.
like why we have decided that yes, four is for us.
Yeah.
And we see the value in it.
Yeah.
And hopefully challenge some mindsets or perspectives today,
Mm.
for those who are either thinking about growing their families,
Yep.
right? Or maybe you are not married yet, but you are considering it. Like, why?
Mm.
Why should we have a family? Why should we raise a family?
Yep.
I think this might be quite helpful.
Yeah. In fact, just this past weekend in church, we dedicated
Oh, that was
the
so
baby,
nice.
and that was really beautiful to see
So
the
beautiful.
parents on stage, the grandparents,
Yeah.
come as well, and seeing the generations engage, seeing the
Yeah.
generations, just be present in church, but also I think in our nation and in our society is such a valuable thing.
Yeah, well, this morning we were just having prata
Yeah.
with our family,
Yes.
right? And we saw generations,
Yep.
right? The grandparents with the kids, and then the grandkids, and we just had a great time,
Had a great time.
because generations are part of God's plan too.
Yeah.
And so it's beautiful when we see that in action,
Mhm.
and we see generations actually stand and take their place,
Yeah.
whether in church, in society. It's a wonderful thing.
It is. Okay, so maybe just a few thoughts that I had. One was, and I was trying to reflect about even our own journey in deciding to have children and eventually, like,
Yep.
deciding to have four. I think later we can talk a bit about that journey of having multiple children. But one of the things that I think I was quite clear about, there are many reasons why you have children. Some people say, it's good lah, just have lah, you know? Or, and okay, yes. But I think if we can see that decision as a step of faith that reflects our values, I think that changes the decision about starting a family. It is a step of faith.
Yeah.
And I think that was really important for me to see, because the reality about choosing to have a child is that there are many costs involved with it. There are many sacrifices involved with it. There is a change to your life that happens. You might have to forego some things. But as with any step of faith that we take it because it is something that we value. And we take that step because it's something that God has called us to do or called us to be. And we figure out the cost later.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to kind of step in about this one, because it's true. Actually, we talked about this, like, change, sacrifice, I think, in a previous episode. But having the fourth kid this time, I think, really made it real for me. In a time and a season when it feels like everything is limited, right? I feel like there's already not enough time. There's maybe even not enough resources. Like, why are we having another one?
Yeah.
And I remember having these conversations with you pretty often.
Yeah.
Just being nervous, a bit anxious about what our future looks like just by adding another member of the family. And of course, it's a gift, but there are fears and
Yep.
there are hesitations behind that. But one thing you always told me is trust God. Like, if He's given this child to us,
Yes.
He will take care of it.
Yes.
Not just it, but He'll take care of everything that comes with having a new baby.
Yep.
And I think that's given me a different perspective.
Yeah.
That's helped me,
Yep.
I think, to have a faith perspective.
Yeah, and I think it is ultimately a faith decision, because I feel like most of our obstacles to starting families is I count the cost and I'm not sure I can pay the price.
Yeah.
We think a lot about the cost side of things. But with any decision of faith, if we kind of consider the cost a little too much, I'm not saying don't consider the cost, but I also say count the cost, but then pick up your cross and carry it and go. But when we dwell too much on the practicalities of what it might look like, very often you would never take that step
True.
of faith. And this is true with any step of faith that
Absolutely.
God calls you to take. He says, hey, step out of the boat, walk on the water. Peter's like, I don't know, am I going to sink? God says, like, you know what, just do it. And I feel like with our kids, and especially now with this fourth kid, it was like, God, we feel it's something that you've called us to do.
Yeah.
We feel it is something valuable. And so we're going to do it. And we're just going to trust. We'll plan, but we'll trust that, God, if this is your design,
Yeah.
if this is your will, God, I believe you can work things out for us.
Yeah.
And he will do that, by supplying, even with this kid, we've had people giving us all kinds of things, uh, and generously. And we're very, very thankful for that. But if it's something that I value, hey, take that step of faith, and trust that God will work out the practicalities.
Yeah.
And it always works out. It always works. It
Yeah.
always works out. And so seeing that as a step of faith, I think, and not just a pro and con decision.
Good.
And I think especially as people of faith, and many people listening, you are a believer. We all want to do what God says, and I would encourage you to take that step and trust God and put it in God's hand. God said, "Be fruitful and multiply."
Yeah.
It is a good thing. Family is God's design. Take that step of faith and then see how God gives you the grace. See how God supplies. See how God just expands your heart,
Yeah.
even for this new thing of going. As with any other step of faith that we take, like take it.
Yeah. And I think I learned too in this season that shifting the mindset from being practical in our society, developed countries especially in Singapore, we are very rational, we're very
Mm.
practical, pragmatic, really. I think that's what defines us. I think it's easy to do that. You list your pros, you list your cons, and then you decide, should I do it or should I not? And that's our way of making decisions. But what we're saying today is like we wanted, as people of faith, actually we make decisions differently. It's
Mm.
not just about, is it more pros than cons? Is it more cons than pros? Therefore, we make a decision. It's not so
Yep.
straightforward.
Yep.
Actually, we make decisions based on our faith
Mm.
and based on our trust in God. And I think that's been the biggest shift for me personally too, because I see everything very naturally. Weird, but we flipped, I think, in some way.
Yeah.
You used to be the more rational guy, and I was the let's have faith for everything. But in this situation, I had to learn how to do that. Like, God, I'm going to trust you.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it makes sense. The numbers don't add up,
Mm.
and it really does not make any sense to me at all. But I'm going to trust that God, if you've given this child to us, God, you'll work out everything. And
Yeah.
it's you are dependable, God. Like,
Yeah.
I can trust you
Yeah.
even in this situation.
Yeah. And I want to speak to people maybe who are listening today, and maybe you're at that point of deciding, man, should I start a family? Should I have a child? I have one. Like, should we take a step and have a second one? My encouragement to you is this: if you feel it's something God is leading you into,
Yeah.
go for it. Go for it and trust that He will supply. Go for it and trust that He would expand your capacity to deal with all the realities of what it
Yeah.
means to raise another child, and trust Him with that thing, and see how God responds
Yeah.
and supplies. And it's a very, very rewarding step of faith, I
Yeah.
think.
I
Uh,
promise you the Singapore government did not sponsor the
no,
episode.
no, I'm not getting a single cent like from this. So I think that was one thing, seeing it as a step of faith.
Yeah.
The second thing I was reflecting about, as you think about, kids and having families, I think one thing that will help us cross that bridge is this: is if we start to think long term and not just short term.
Yeah.
Um, and the reality, it's not a short time that you're raising kids, but the reality is that it's maybe 12, 18, maybe 20 years that kids would live under your roof, and you have to care for them. It is true that the early years are always harder, and those are the things that usually weigh most heavily in our minds, right?
Yeah.
Someone asked me the other day, so are you ready to change diapers again? You ready for late night feeds again?
Yeah.
You ready for the crying and all that again? And I was like, okay, that's the reality of having, a newborn in your home.
Mm.
But those seasons do pass. And there is a long term value, I think, in family and having kids in your home. You talked about, this morning we were with my parents and with my siblings and all the grandkids and all that. Obviously, my parents are way past those, child raising years. But now they get to enjoy the fruit of this, being in family, having grandkids that I'm thankful they love and help us with and take care of. But that long term, I don't know, reward, that long term like fulfillment that comes from family is not always something that we think about. If you're a 20-something-year-old, 30-something-year-old, you don't think about what life is like when you're 50 or you're 60,
True.
and what your family wants, what will look like then. You're thinking about, man, the cost. You're thinking about the preschool. You're thinking about the sleep. You're thinking about your career and all that. But my encouragement is like, man, think a little long term. And we talk about this, every older couple that we've met, people in their 50s and people in their 60s, would always tell us, man, if I could turn back the clock, I wish I had maybe like one more child.
Yeah.
If I could turn back the clock, I would have expanded my family like a little bit more, because at that point you look back and you're like, oh, I mean, it seemed difficult in the moment, but now looking back, man, the reward and the return is so much more than the cost of what it seemed at that
Yes.
time. So I think having a bit of that long-term perspective, and it is longer term, you're thinking 20, 30 years down the road. But I think sometimes that might help us in that moment of decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's, when you think about being practical, right? A lot of people actually do count the cost in the long term, right? So, for example, when you're investing in something, right, you're thinking about what kind of long term rewards you're going to get from that.
Yeah.
And it is important, I think, even in these parts of our lives where you don't see the immediate rewards, but it's not about the immediate things that you see, or figuring that out first. You want to actually see God, like, what are we investing in for the long term? What does that bring about in the long term? And that's important too, but I feel like maybe for most people that's harder to see right now.
Yeah.
That's definitely a perspective that is harder to have
Mm.
when you are right in the problem or
Yeah.
right in the issue.
Yeah. I mean, not to say that there are no short-term rewards. Having kids now, I mean,
Exactly. Oh
it's
my word, they're
super
so
fun and
cute.
it's enjoyable and
Yeah.
all of that. But even thinking about a legacy,
Yeah, good.
and we're not super old. And if you're at the point of like thinking about kids, you're probably not very old and you're not thinking about my legacy and my future and all that. But, in our church, we're in this season now talking about legacy and, giving to the future and for future generations. And there's just a difference in your motivations, I think.
Yeah.
What am I building and who am I building it for?
Mm.
Whether in my own life, whether in my own family, in my own career. Why am
Yeah.
I like wanting to do well and, gain wealth? But who's it for? And that idea that I can build something for a future generation that I have a hand in, well, not just giving birth to, but raising, developing, and then releasing so that they can make a difference in their world in future, I think is so powerful. The Bible says that children are like arrows in your quiver.
Yeah.
So that they're not like stones that you have to carry in your bag, like a weight that you have to carry. They're like arrows in your quiver that you get to, fire and, affect the kingdom of God with and, build the future with. And so I think having that long term perspective uh, has helped me, at least, get through, I think, some of the realities of what parenting in this season looks like.
Yeah. And I feel like, all these points are really, really valuable and important. But some people are still thinking about, I think most people actually want to be great parents.
Mm.
And so they have some fears, they have some hesitations about what that might look like. I was just having a conversation with somebody on Sunday. In fact, this was the second time I was having this conversation. And the realities of it is not just cost,
Mm.
they're also worried about how do we split our attention,
Mm.
right? Our love, our time, right? With multiple children, for
Yeah.
example. Because I think it's one thing to say, okay, I'll have one kid,
Mm.
but sometimes the fear of having the second, the third, the fourth, multiples
Yeah.
is very real too.
Yeah.
Cost is one, obviously, but it's also, can I split my time and attention amongst these ones? And so, what would you say to that?
Yeah. One thing I'll say is that I wouldn't sugarcoat the realities of having multiple children.
Yes.
One of the things we've been talking about now, we live in a flat. And we've got 3 bedrooms, so one's our own, and then now we have 4 kids and 2 bedrooms. And you're going to have a newborn that has a totally different, rhythm of life. And so actually in the next few weeks, we're going to shift all the kids to be in one room. And okay, you guys all just sleep here on your own, and then so that the baby can have his own room when he comes. And okay, I mean, those are real things. We drive a car, which is, I'm very thankful for. But it's a sedan. So you fit 3 kids in the back, and then that's it. And with the fourth kid, I don't know, do you throw them in the boot or what? And we don't have all of
On
that
top of the car?
on top of the car. I don't know, we'll dangle him out the window or like something. But this is a faith thing, even for me.
Yeah.
Like God, you said, go for it, have the fourth. Um, I don't know how it's all going to work out. So, I mean, just putting that out there, it's true. It's not, we don't live some dream life. We're very thankful we've got grandparents, who are around to help. We're in a community where we get the support we need. You made a decision many years ago that you would spend most of your time at home, and so you're present with the kids and all of that. But I think for the people who are thinking about, man, I've got one and done, right? That's kind of the saying. Like, how do I have more? Like, do I have capacity for more?
Yeah.
Um, I said time is not infinite. You got to manage time management. But parents have superpowers. Parents have ways to figure things out and be more effective, and hacks. And maybe we should do another episode just about life hacks. How do you multiply your time? But I think love is not finite.
Yeah.
You said this, like, love multiplies.
Yeah.
It doesn't divide. And as we've had more and more kids, I don't feel like now, well, we used to love Josiah with 100%, and then when Sarah came along, well, you guys get like 50% each, and then
Yeah.
when Chloe came along, it's like, all right, you get 1/3 of the amount of love you used to get at the start, and now this baby's coming. It's like, all right, it doesn't work that way. It's not a
No.
division of your love. I think love, multiplies. And I was thinking about this, like, the heart of God. God loves each of us individually, and he would die for us, and he did die for us, individually. But he loves all of humanity, and it's not like, man, as humanity grew, God was like, oh my gosh, now I'm gonna have to like divide my love, and
Yeah.
and I think we have that same love that's in our hearts.
Yeah.
God gives us that capacity to love our kids equally. No one measures love. I mean, I think that concept to begin with is just like, what do you measure it by? Um, you know, the differences in time, attention, all that kind of thing. But I think that sense of a child being loved is not quantified purely in those terms.
Yeah.
And I think, uh, yeah, and I think God's given us like the grace, even as you've got more kids. In fact, the people, I feel like, at least in our generation, the families with more kids, you feel like the kids actually feel a bit more like adjusted, loved,
Yeah.
and all of that. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, or whatever, but I think there's a special grace for that to happen. It's a special grace for parents, I think, like, to love your kids. You learn how to do that. But I think also the kids themselves like contribute to that reservoir of love in the home. As you have more kids, your older ones start to love the younger ones too.
Yeah.
And so it's not just on me to now feel like, man, I need to love all of you. Actually, you've got siblings who also love, and it just multiplies.
Yeah. And I also feel like capacity can be grown,
Mm.
right? So, like what you're saying, love is not finite. It's not like you have a fixed amount. Our capacity to love can increase too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was one of the main things I was telling some of these friends, right? Like, it's not as if like you have to split now. It's not a fair division because people are afraid that I'm being unfair
Yeah.
to one other child or this child. And that's just the reality. But actually, when the child comes along, the second, the third, the fourth comes along, you realize God actually gives us greater capacity to
Yep.
love, greater capacity to increase in the way that we love each child. And, we talked about this in the context of marriage, but even with children, actually, in every season they're in, they feel love differently.
Mm.
And as as they grow and as they develop, as they age in their own way, actually God gives us wisdom on how to love them where they're at too. And
Yeah.
so it doesn't feel like it always has to be an equal way of doing it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents get caught up with that thought.
Yes.
It needs to be equal, but that's not true.
Yep.
And we're not saying like, oh, you favor one over the other. You should never do that.
Yeah.
But you learn how to love each one in the way they need to be loved.
Yes.
And God gives us that capacity to
Yeah.
do that. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to learn as a parent too. We talked about this when we took on a new campus, right, at our church too. And it's not as if like we love the other one less or more or whatever. It wasn't to do with that. It was just like, God, you've given us space to love another one,
Mm,
and
mm,
it's a beautiful thing like that. God almost gives us a glimpse of his own heart too,
yeah.
right? Just like what you're saying. It's a
Yes.
reflection of his heart for his children. And we learn that. We learn how to pick up on those things and not get too caught up in this, like, must be fair. It has to be equal,
Mm,
right? It doesn't have to be, because God can grow our capacity to love. And
yeah.
so as we do that, we're gonna see like, oh, okay, actually I can do this. I can love another child. I can give to another child, and the other one will not feel like they've been shortchanged in
Yeah.
any way.
Yeah. And, and I think there's can I just throw like a leadership kind of dimension to it too? Because, in any other area of our lives, we want to expand and multiply.
Yes.
As a leader, if you're a leader of, one or, two, you're like, man, I want more people like under my leadership. I want to grow my company. I want to grow my influence. And, in those areas of our lives, we think, yes, grow, expand. I will learn more and I will upskill and I will have a capacity to deal with my time so that I can, like kind of grow in
Yeah,
those
true.
things. And we always have that growth mindset. I think sometimes we need that growth mindset when it comes to parenting,
It's true.
like in our home. You know, in work, it's like, man, give me more teams so I can lead. But at home, like, man, as few, like kids as possible. But I think we can have that mindset of like, God, personally, I want to grow, in my parenting. Maybe it's skill, maybe it's time, maybe it's communication, maybe it's capacity, maybe it's strength, and those things. But I think we can have that mindset to keep expanding and keep growing. And it's fun. Last week, Josiah had a parent teacher meeting.
Yes.
But it was already the school holidays, so the girls were with us. The two girls were with us, and we said, okay, why don't you come with us? For Koko's like meet the parents session. I wasn't sure at first because in those things you talk about him, and the teachers might say things, and some of it's sensitive. So we wanted to leave them outside the room, but the teacher said, no, it's fine, you can come in. And so we talked pretty openly. I mean, we're pretty open with our kids. We're open with our praise, but we're open with like areas that you need to improve or grow in. And so we talked about some of those things. And so the girls were obviously like very curious, right? One of the teachers said, "Oh, actually, Josiah's got great leadership capacity."
Yes.
And
He's very
then
well liked by his
very
peers.
well liked by his peers, great leader, and so they looked at the sisters and then they said, oh, it must be because like, he's an older brother. And I told the teachers you should interview the sisters to get the
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 full
real
picture.
the real opinion, right? Don't just take it for granted. But the teachers were very, very kind, and they
Yeah.
said, hey, he's like so helpful in class and
Yeah.
just great to be around, and and so they were affirming, and so that meeting ended like really well. What was cool was we walked out. You remember this?
Yeah, of course.
And Sarah, we said
Our
Sarah like,
second one.
yeah, our second kid was like, oh, Sarah, like, how did you find that? And Josiah, I think, felt pretty good at the end of the meeting
Yes.
because I think it ended affirming.
We're very thankful for this school too.
Super
I
thankful.
think it's been 5 years of having
PTMs.
PTMs or PCTCs, whatever they call them, and it's always been good.
Yeah.
We've never had a bad experience. Yeah.
And so we asked Sarah, how is it? And she said, "Wow, I didn't know Coco was so good." You know, and it was just cool, like to
Yeah.
see that and to see her like celebrate like her brother too, or even for her to say that was like that was the way that she was loving him
Yeah.
or affirming him, elevating him, and you could see that when he heard that from her, he was also like, yeah, like, you didn't know, like I'm always this good, and she's like, no, more in school than at home, but
Yeah.
that's a sibling thing, but just seeing that dynamic
Yeah.
like come together, I think it's so rewarding,
It is.
and you see a different dimension of even how the kids themselves learn to relate with one another,
Yeah.
and it's not just nothing to do with us per se. I didn't have to go and like, oh man, it's all on me to do it. Like
Yeah.
raise your kids well, and actually they love one another, they affirm one another, and then in return, like we feel blessed by it too,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
Siblings are a gift to each other,
Mhm.
really. It's a great gift to give to them. Siblings, because they have so much fun together. They look out for one another. They
Yep.
support one another. Of course, they fight.
Yep.
Of course, they argue, but there's so much value in that too. So why don't we end with this? What would your encouragement be? I think to those who are listening, whether or not they're contemplating having kids, maybe they're young still and they're thinking about their future, or maybe those who are already in the thick of it. They've had one, it's been hard, and they were thinking, should I have another one? Should I have another one? And yeah, maybe what would you say to them?
Yeah. I think first I would say, look, having had kids of our own, like, I think I understand. I empathize.
Yeah.
It's not a decision to be taken lightly. It is a serious commitment. You are responsible for lives, you know. But I would also say, hey, if it's something that's valuable, if it's a value that you carry,
Yes.
what you value becomes a priority in your life, you know. And so I would value that. I would value kids. I would value growing your family. I think above, I don't know, our fears, above our hesitations, above the practical realities of what it means, you know, and let your decisions be a reflection of your values. I think that's one. And it's easy to say, but I think this is one area where, you know, you start to really have to think about, God, what is it that I really value? The second thing I would say is like, hey, take it to the Lord, like in prayer.
Yes.
It took us a while before having this fourth child.
Yes.
We had three, and you know, Chloe is now five, and we were quite okay. We were quite done. The door was open, but it was only when we prayed and we felt God say like, "Go for it," that it gave us the confidence to try and now expect
Yeah.
the fourth kid. And so don't do it recklessly, don't do it foolishly, but seek the Lord, like pray, open your heart to Him, and catch the Father's heart. I think like catch the heart of God, and I think sometimes if once He touches our hearts and once He speaks to us, He will work all the realities out.
Yeah.
And so that'll be my encouragement. I would say, hey, go for it. God is with you, and we're passionate about even helping couples or families like navigate these things. I mean, we're still early in our parenting journey. We don't yet have teenagers, and that will be a whole other thing.
Other thing.
And we'll, maybe talk about it when that season comes. But, as far as like we've seen and we've experienced, like God has been good, God is with us. And so my encouragement is, hey, go for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your heart. This is rare that you are so passionate about something.
I mean,
and so I was like, yes, let's do it. Let's talk about this. So I really appreciate it. Yeah. Well, and thank you so much for listening to this conversation. I do hope this episode has helped you to live full.